Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Shelley Prevost, CEO of Torch. Shelley, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. It's interesting what you guys are doing, and I'm excited now that I'm a father myself to kind of talk about what you're doing in the kind of the space that you're in. We'll kind of get to that later, but maybe before we kind of get into Torch, let's kind of cover your background and where you grew up.
Sure. I grew up lots of places. It's really difficult for me when people say, where are you from? It's difficult for me to really distill that down into one spot.
Okay.
I was born in Missouri, kind of Midwest.
Sure.
My dad was in pharmaceutical sales, and he was very good at it, so he kept getting promotions.
Okay.
So we moved, I ended up spending the most of my formative years in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay, interesting.
Middle school, high school, and into college. And then, so we were there probably 9 years. And went to Georgetown College, which is in central Kentucky, small Southern Baptist school. Sure.
What did you take?
I was a psychology and communications double major.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so I knew, having taken psychology, actually it was my junior year, my advisor said, you have to pick a major. I was like, well, I like psychology. I have the most classes in psychology. Let's do that.
Sure.
So I did, and I learned very quickly that I needed to go on and get a master's to really do what I wanted to do with psychology. So then I went to Wheaton College in Chicago area and did a master's.
Why did you go up to Chicago, just out of curiosity?
I did my research and looked at different schools. It had a really good reputation. It was kind of a pastoral counseling type of program. It was a master's in clinical psychology, but it was at this, evangelical Christian school.
Sure.
It was just a fantastic education. So, and I was ready for a change. I had kind of spent most of my Cincinnati and then Kentucky, so I'd kind of done this Midwest type of life for a while, so I was ready for a change. Chicago is still one of my favorite cities. I had a ball there for 2 years. And at the time, so I had just met my husband right around then. And he moved up to Chicago so that we could date. So we dated for a couple years and then got married. And then he ended up joining a PhD in creative writing program in Atlanta. At Georgia State. So we were there for 5 years. And and I was a school counselor at a school for a couple years, and then decided I wanted to go back to seminary. So I went to Emory for a year in their Masters of Theological Studies program. And I tell people I got knocked up, which is not entirely true because I was married, but it's a fun story to tell. So we had decided that we wanted to have a baby, and it just happened very quickly. So our first son was born in Atlanta in 2002, and that was kind of the point where I just really kind of reevaluated my life. Quite frankly, like, do I want to do this academic thing? At the time, I was looking at a PhD program in religion and personality.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I just decided I don't want to do that. So stopped that program and became a youth director at a Methodist church that I loved still to this day. There's great people there. And then we moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where my husband got a job. So that's where we are now.
Okay, awesome. So I'm kind of curious to know what Torch is and kind of why did you decide to start the company?
Yeah. So obviously my background's in psychology.
Yeah.
I'm not a techie at all. Like, I laugh, but I'm the most non-technical co-founder of a tech company ever.
I think that's interesting because there's a lot of people, and especially some of the listeners, that are kind of in the same boat as you, right? That they want to do something, but they're not technical or don't consider themselves technical.
Find the right people.
Yeah. And the other thing too is any industry you're in nowadays, you basically need a tech component. Like there's some piece of technology you're relying on to run your business.
That's right. Yeah, and I think finding those right technical co-founders, which I'm fortunate to have.
Okay.
And then you don't have to be technical to lead a company.
Sure.
And really, in fact, I think there's some value in not being technical. I think that there's a perspective that I have as an outsider looking in that is just fresh. It's something different, and it's something that I can empathize with the non-technical people out there, and parents especially. And so that's what Torch is. So I'll back up 3 years. My oldest son was 10 at the time. He's 13 now. And he was starting to show signs of a video game addiction with
like most teenage boys.
Yes, a fun little game called Minecraft, which a lot of your listeners will know.
Sure.
He was playing it all hours of the day and night. He would sneak and play from like 1 to 5 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Unbeknownst to me and my husband, and we thought something was wrong. His grades were slipping. We thought he was sick. Teachers were calling us in and saying, something's going on. So, like most parents, we felt we wanted to figure out what's happening. How do we help? And it took us a long time, really a couple months, to figure out that he was gaming overnight.
Sure. So how did you kind of originally or eventually figure it out?
Well, it became clear as he was literally sleeping through class. Like he's clearly fatigued here. There's some sleep deprivation going on. And then we did we would check search histories, which he was really good at clearing his search history. That's right, or going incognito. But he would forget to do it some, and so we would learn pretty quickly. And I think that was the moment where like, oh my gosh, he's playing all the time. Like he would play all the time if we'd let him.
Sure.
So we started unplugging the router every night because that's the only thing we knew to do.
Sure.
Just to he has to sleep. He has to go get some sleep.
Sure.
And we would put it in our bedside table.
Okay.
Just so that was the only peace of mind that's the only thing we knew to do.
Sure.
And I've come to find out as I've been doing this with Torch, a lot of parents actually do that, which is crazy that it gets to that point.
Sure.
So that was really it. And then, my other 2 kids are not as technically kind of inclined as my oldest, but they have stumbled upon stuff. And one Nicki Minaj video that was problematic.
Sure.
We had to do a lot of explaining about what it was. So, there's just, I think, a real... there was a disconnect in our home between the technical exploration that my kids were doing and what my husband and I were equipped to oversee.
Sure.
And so that was really the birth of Torch. Fortunately, I was a partner at a venture capital incubator at the time and had a group of IT guys who were like, we're going to help you. We're going to figure this out.
So you got lucky, really.
Really lucky. And that's honestly part of the reason Torch exists too, is that it didn't feel fair. Like, my friends don't have IT people to help them. Like, you shouldn't need a network engineering degree to protect your kids online. So, so they started helping me think through the problem in 2 ways. One was technically, they were configuring routers for me because they knew how to do it.
Sure.
And then they were also my coaches. They were helping me understand, what was he doing? Why was Minecraft so compelling? What is this site that he was going on all the time? It was some, he's like some Mexican hacker site where he was learning, getting cheat codes. And totally. He, so he's got this engineering brain that was just kind of compelled to do work with technology.
Sure.
And I didn't understand it. And so they became my interpreters and my tech educators. And through that process, we figured out that there's actually a business model. There's something here because, my generation of parents, I'm 41, and, our kids, I didn't have a computer until I was about 21.
Okay.
In college. I was a sophomore in college. Before we actually had the internet, we still had DOS, and it was, the really archaic kind of screens. And I've never been technology actually frustrates me. So I try to stay away from it.
So I think a lot of people are in that boat, right?
And a lot of my generation, we just didn't grow up with it. And so now we have kids that are moving into middle school, which is where the apex of like technology use kind of is middle schoolers.
Sure.
That's the kids use it the most, 7th and 8th grade, and it kind of actually dies down later in high school.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm at this kind of critical point of needing to help my kids understand it, figure out how to ethically use it, mindfully use it, and I don't really know how to do that because I don't have any context for that. And I think people are looking for guidelines.
100% agree.
And we're all asking each other, my mom friends will sit around and talk about like what's normal, how much screen time should they have, and even things like what's the best math app for long division. Things that we just because our kids are spending so much time online.
Yep.
And so that's really wanting to give parents access and tools and simplify technology for parents so that they can become like well-equipped mentors for their kids growing technology.
Sure. No, I think that's really awesome. And I've actually kind of been thinking a lot about this as well. And like I mentioned kind of earlier is like now that I'm a dad, this is kind of, my daughter's 1.5 years. So obviously I don't really have to worry about her surfing the internet right now, but she's starting to play little games and whatnot on the phone. And you can already see that, I'm going to need to deal with this probably sooner than later. And I kind of wanted to have you on the show. And why I reached out to you is because I thought, this is something I'm going to deal with. There's a lot of parents dealing with this. I know I have friends that have kids and whatnot. And so your first product is a router. So maybe do you want to kind of talk about exactly what it does and what it's for?
Sure. So it's probably the most unsexy way to attack this problem, but it's the most smart way to get to the solution here.
Totally.
If you want to adjust internet use in the house, it's through the router. I mean, that's the simple, most comprehensive way to do it. And so usually when I say router, people kind of gloss over. But yeah, the router is it. The router is the power of the internet in your house. And so if you can harness that and adjust it, then you're gonna be a leg up on people that don't have the ability to manage that. So what we have done is basically pre-configured a router so you can set a bedtime. That's the first thing. Set a bedtime for your kid's internet. So just like here we are at SupX, and I said this morning, I introduced myself and I said, there was a moment of clarity where a year ago I was like, someone invented a switch for the light bulb for electricity. Like I can turn off the light at night and everybody, it's sleep, we're sleeping now. It's dark. Okay. Why has someone not done that for the internet? And so that's one of the first things we're doing is giving parents, we call it a pause button, not a switch, but so if you just want like your kids to go to bed, you can configure their bedtime. It comes on in the morning when they're up and should have access to the internet. You can go in and pause it for things like dinner time. We have kind of no screen Sundays. So Sunday afternoons where if it's family time or it's reading time or, something that doesn't involve a screen. So that would be a perfect example of a time that you might want to pause the internet in your house.
Sure. That's actually a really good idea because I usually try to just take Saturday off. And I never thought about like actually just turning off my router, but like I put my phone away.
Yeah, even that's hard though.
Yeah. Oh, it's extremely
really
difficult
because then you can kind of keep like checking and.
Oh
looking.
Yes, for sure. And like my OCD is off the charts if I don't have my phone for like around me. So to try to do it for an entire day is.
I've started wearing a watch so that I'm not always kind of connected to my phone.
Interesting.
And then we've actually just repurchased an alarm clock, which feels so ancient because I had my phone by my bedside and I would check it. And so, and here's the thing too, like, and I'll get back to talking about the router, but we adults can't control this.
Totally.
Why do we think our kids have an ability, fully developed prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that makes judgment and rational decisions when they don't really have that fully developed until they're in their 20s. So we're giving them, 5-year-olds a key to the car and saying good luck, make good decisions. And I think you're right when you said earlier that there's a kind of a wave happening right now. I think parents are beating this drumbeat of this is not good. This isn't good enough. Getting in front of the wave of technology, the wave of the internet, the kind of full throttle approach that we have been with the last couple decades, that the internet has existed in full throttle form for everybody, including our 5-year-olds, including our 1.5-year-olds. So now I think there is kind of the pendulum swing where parents are saying, yeah, this isn't cool. Like, we need a light switch. We need the ability to oversee what our kids are doing online.
Sure. So I'm curious, how do I control the router? Is it from my phone or laptop or
both?
Okay.
So we have a web app, and then we will have a mobile app that you can go in and basically. So what it is a pause button that controls the gateway for the bandwidth in your house, so all the data in and out of your house. So when you push the pause button, the gate closes. Okay. And so what we're doing too is every kid in your house will have their own profile. And then there's an adult profile that's not monitored. It's not restricted at all.
Okay.
And then you can pause the whole house
Very cool.
for things like dinner time or, honey, get off your phone too, or whatever. Or if you need to pause a specific kid, so you can just pause their devices because it's their profile.
Sure.
And then the other thing we're doing is reporting feature, which is very much like a search history that you would get on any computer, but it's it's all pulled together from every device.
Okay.
And kids can't circumvent it. So because it's at the router, they can't erase it. They can't, even if they go incognito, the router still has access to that data. Therefore, the parents have access to the data. And I'll tell you too, it's really one of the things we've kind of baked into the philosophy of our company is if we'll be able to tell if kids are trying to get around the router with proxy servers, different things like that where they might be able to circumvent.
Sure.
And so what I want to do as CEO of this company is email the parents and say, this is, your kid did this and this kid's brilliant. This kid needs to get to MIT. Because if they can successfully get around our router, we want them for a summer intern. Or you need to really harness their curiosity and their abilities and put it into a direction that can benefit our world.
Yeah, because you can turn something like that very positive, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Even a lot of hackers that get into, I don't know, like a bank, for example, the bank ends up hiring them because it's like, look, you figured out this. We've spent X amount of dollars, probably tens of millions of dollars on this stuff. Mm-hmm. Come tell us the other holes,
exactly.
right? So
help us.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and that's the whole space fascinates me.
Don't slap their hand.
Totally.
Redirect it and harness this intellectual curiosity that a lot of these kids have for technology.
Sure.
So that's one. I think that's just one of the fun things that we're going to be able to do. And then we do have a filtering, what we call curating ability. So if you see them going on sites that you don't like, you can remove it from their profile.
Oh, okay. So you can just block this site.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And you don't have to do it manually. I mean, you get a little thumbnail of what the homepage looks like.
Right.
And so you can very simply, very easily figure out if this is something you want them to see or not.
Very cool. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think what you guys are doing is actually really interesting to me. And I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think most parents need this, but they didn't know that this exists. And that's a huge thing. So I'm kind of curious to know, where can I get one and what's the cost?
Yes, so we're direct to consumer right now on our website. So you can go to mytorch.com.
Okay.
And it's $200. And we're in pre-orders right now through the end of April. Okay. At which point we'll ship it. We'll be shipping the product.
Okay.
I will say, if you go probably to our Facebook page.
Okay.
So if you just search for Torch on Facebook, we have some coupon codes going on right now. So you can get 25% off, up to $50 off for the cost of the router. And we're doing a lot of that right now through pre-orders, so that when we do ship it, will be a $200 price point for the router.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And you guys were funded on Kickstarter, correct?
We were. Mm-hmm.
So how was that experience? I know a lot of people have different opinions on kind of the Kickstarter model, but it seems like it was really successful for you guys.
Well, and so we were really lucky to have raised a seed round earlier. Okay. And so for us, Kickstarter was really a market test. Like, are people going to pre-order this? Basically, is there a product market fit here? Like, we knew there was a problem. We'd done a bunch of focus groups, talked to thousands. I've literally talked to thousands of parents at this point.
Sure.
who are all kind of beating the same drum of the problem.
Okay.
But what we wanted to figure out is does our solution make sense?
Okay.
So that's what Kickstarter was for us. It was
Okay.
it was an intense month, and everybody on the team can tell you, like, we were all crazy people for really the 6 months leading up to Kickstarter.
Sure.
Because really the success of Kickstarter is in the planning.
Oh,
is in the preparation. So we just did a ton of market tests and focus groups, and I would go to conferences and like parenting conferences, and I'd be speaking and I'd be giving my card out.
Okay.
We would be building our email list so that when we launched on Kickstarter, we would basically, ask all those thousands of people that we had met,
sure,
come back, here's, pre-order this, support our mission, support this movement of digital parenting. And so that's how we were, I believe, able to be successful.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think there's a lot of people out there that fail on Kickstarter, but they just post an idea and don't really do anything with it. But I love the idea that you guys spent like a huge amount of time before you went on there to be successful. You mentioned something that was interesting to me. When you said focus groups, what exactly did you do in these focus groups to kind of validate your product idea?
Yeah, it was probably what I would just consider a typical focus group where I would put my psychologist hat on a lot, and I would want to try to understand not only the pain point of what parents were dealing and struggling with, but what were they already looking for with solutions.
Okay.
And trying to understand what has been done, what isn't working already. So that, and we did some UI testing a little bit, like we would show them some mock-ups that we had and some models, even some early kind of prototypes that we would draw up. And we get feedback on that. But it was mostly, this sociological kind of phenomenon happening right now with technology and families. And so we dove deep into the problem.
Okay.
Because anecdotally, I understand it because I have 3 kids, but I wanted to understand the complexity of it and from lots of different angles. And so that's, and obviously there is a market. We've had over 1,000 backers, 1,000 families on Kickstarter, and we're seeing startups crop up, almost daily trying to solve this problem. And so, there's definitely a market there.
No, I love it. So I'm kind of curious, maybe let's cover some other kind of tips and advice that you can kind of provide to parents that, that you're like, oh, I have this problem, and kind of how you solved it, or kind of just advice for people out there that don't really understand the space at all.
Yeah. And, it's, I get asked a lot, what's your advice?
Sure.
My big, huge, 2 big things that I talk a lot about. One is understand your kid, because their threshold will be different. Even if you have several kids, their threshold for what they can tolerate, whether it's screen time, whether it's content, their threshold's going to be different than your other children. So I think that's the one big thing, is that there's no kind of foolproof method here for kids and screen time. And I think even the American Academy of Pediatrics are redoing all of their guidelines because they're outdated. I mean, we're figuring this out. And so I think really getting to know your kid and their threshold. I have one child who we've pretty much had to ban video games because he just doesn't have the capacity to really manage that right now for himself. And then I have a couple kids that's not so much a problem. So I think really understanding that. And I think also, so insights, for example, that you would get from our router. It's, for us, it's really it's an engagement tool.
Okay.
So understanding your kid's digital footprint and where are they going and where are they gravitating online? Where are they spending a lot of time? What does that say about your kid? And then it opens up some really great parenting conversations with your kids. Like parenting moments, we call them.
And I think the other thing interesting about that data is almost career focused down the line. Like you could basically say, oh, you like this kind of area of things, maybe we should look at going to a career fair on, I don't know, this area, right?
Absolutely.
So that's actually really interesting.
Even for me, it was, seeing that my child, and even my 2 younger ones now, want to spend hours and hours playing Minecraft.
Sure.
Or hours and hours watching drawing videos, art videos on YouTube.
Sure.
Or, they have their thing. I tell people that what your kid is doing online says a lot about who they are.
Sure.
But also about who they're becoming.
Sure.
And so I think that we aren't doing our job as parents if we're not engaging in that and fostering that and having conversations. And so that's my other piece of advice. Get those insights and talk to your kid about it. Engage with them there. Let them teach you. Let them show you what they're learning.
Sure.
And then, when you see things you don't want them to see on their the reporting feature, talk to them about it. Let them know why this is not appropriate. What is kind of an age-appropriate way to talk about some of the content that they're seeing that maybe they're not ready for.
Sure.
So it really is know your kid and talk to your kid. And so those are kind of the two overarching kind of philosophies that I talk about. And I think, in terms of the guidelines, everyone's like, how much screen time and how much. Sure. And I don't think we figured that out. I think I can show you as much data to suggest that kids who game like a lot fare very well, and I can show you data to support that kids who game a lot are not faring very well. So we have, I think we will all be dead and gone before we have real conclusive data about what are the effects on the brain, what are the effects on empathy, something that a lot of people are talking about with technology, the kind of this lack of empathy that kids are growing up with.
Sure.
And I am just very cautious to come down on either end of that because I just don't think we know. And again, I think it's we do have data, but by and large, rely on the anecdotal evidence of your kid.
Sure. And I think the other part of the thing, back to just kind of the data comment, it's like some of these devices haven't even been around a decade. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how can we do decades of research when these devices haven't even been around that long?
Yeah.
So,
and real reliable data takes a long time because it's test and retest, it's validity, it's reliability. And so we do have some data, but to suggest that it's kind of this foolproof for all kids, I think is not what I would want to say.
Sure. And your comment earlier about kind of nurturing the type of child they are.
That's right.
I think it's kind of really resonates with me because my parents were always super supportive of kind of anything that I've ever done. And I understand that that's not always the case with a lot of people. But I remember growing up and we had a friend and his wife was always like, you can never make money in the arts. And it's kind of like, and he played drums and now he's a music teacher. It's like, well, that's the arts. He's teaching music. So it's like, he's a teacher, but he's still in the arts. It doesn't mean like, okay, maybe you can't color for a living or whatever. But, and like, I would say I'm in the arts, right? Like I'm creative director at a software company. And,
Absolutely.
So that's the art. So I think you could say like, here's how you can take your creativity and here's the jobs that are creative, or if you're in technology or into science or math, or here's the jobs that you could go into that support what you're into, right?
That's right, yeah. And I think that's the beauty of technology too. And I think that's why kids love it so much.
Totally.
Because there's so many directions that you can go. And technology is a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool. Finding your passion and finding something that you're interested in. Technology is a tool to help you grow that and scale that. My son has just, we've kind of said, we've curbed the video games. But now he's creating with some kind of synthesizer software, like a lot of music. And so.
Oh, very cool.
And he's even starting to write novels about video game playing, like stories and kind of. So I think that there's an artistic side that's kind of amplified with technology for him. And so I think we don't have all the answers about our kids.
Sure.
And I think part of parenting is letting them teach us who they are.
Sure. And I think that's interesting too, because your son could like self-publish a book now and he could sell 1 million copies on Amazon. And even if he charged like $3 or $10 or something, right? Like he could be technically a published author by the time hasn't even graduated like high school yet, right? Or even junior high.
Kids today,
middle school.
Even millennials, I would say, they get that. They get the power of technology. It's my generation of parents, my adults who we vilify it. We don't understand it because we don't understand it. We humans fear what they don't understand.
Fair.
And so I think that me not growing up with technology and being adept at it, I tend to I'm suspect of it. And so my son has taught me over the last 3 years, and all my kids, that it's not going away. You know, the internet's here, and they love it. And I better, if I'm going to be the parent I want to be, I better roll my sleeves up and get in there with them. And that's really what our router's about. It's a tool to help parents who want to be engaged in what their kid and who their kids are. It gives them a way to be able to do that.
Yeah, and an easy way that you don't have to be technical, because most people nowadays have a smartphone or a laptop or both, probably both, right? And the price point is coming down so much that it's just, that's what you have nowadays. And being able to control your technology and monitor your kids, I think is super important. And I think it's just, we're at the very beginning of this, and I kind of love that about what you guys are doing. So I'm kind of curious to know, obviously the router is kind of your first product. Are you working on kind of a second product now, or is it kind of, what's the future of Torch? Or you don't know?
Well, I have, I wish I had a crystal ball. I have big dreams and visions for this company. What we're focused on right now is building the most badass router and bringing it to market by April, in April. We will be adding features to the router. You know, again, it's all about user experience for us and customer empathy. And so as we learn from our customers what their needs are, we will be able to determine what features make the most sense. Part of our mission is to strip out the complexity. And so I think a lot of us don't know what we need. So we're already doing R&D with some features, thinking about like what would homework mode look like, you know. So when your kid, and because that's most kids have to work on a laptop now, and get very distracted by what else is on that laptop. And so if you could put your child into homework mode, they would only be able to access these school approved, mom, dad approved sites.
So you could say like between 6 and 7 is like homework mode, and they can't access, I don't know, YouTube or something. Okay, interesting. Okay.
And also this idea of kind of crowdsourcing the internet is a really kind of an interesting idea that we are starting to explore more and more about, like I said earlier, the blind leading the blind, where parents are asking other parents who no one knows. Like, we're like, I don't know what's a good site for this or for math or for what. I don't know a site that you should probably block that's, should be aware of. So what we'll be able to do, and one of the reasons we chose to go the router direction, is with the data, very secure data from the router, we'll be able to anonymize it and aggregate that. And so all the Torch families, and again, it's, well over 1,000 at this point, we will be able to crowdsource a better internet for families. And so really, and pushing back to parents, here are some 87% of parents have blocked this site. Would you like to block it?
It's a good idea, actually.
Here's some trending apps that you might want to be aware of. Websites that, if your kid's into art, here's some things that, here's, top 10 art sites. So once we start categorizing the web, then we can really start to push out some great information to parents. Yeah, no,
I think that's really useful. And I guess, like me being technical, I'm always sharing stuff like that, right? And I use apps even on my phone that kind of say like call blocking, or I use a call blocking app that basically the crowd can say like block this guy, and then everybody gets that. And I think that's super useful to have. It's a
sharing economy for your kids' digital habits. We need to help each other figure this out. It's the village, right? The tech village metaphor.
No, that's awesome. That's very cool. So
one more thing too, I'll tell you. So we one of the first kind of challenges I usually get is people are saying, well, what about LTE? Kid has a phone, they have an iPad, they can just bump off your Wi-Fi, which we say, yes, that is true. So we're already in development for a mobile device management system. So we're going to be able to extend the protective bubble, if you will, outside of the home. So with their mobile devices, you can kind of assign the same rules and have the same oversight.
Cool. So it's just an app for the phone then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So, and it's kind of a layered effect. So you'll have, and there are companies that are already doing this, and we chose the router because we wanted to be a gateway into people's home and build that relationship, build that trust with them. So when you say things like mobile device management, they're not like, what is what is that? So when we introduce some new technology, then we've already got that foundation of trust with our customers. So.
No, that's really cool, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, and as your kids probably, if they're younger, obviously they're probably surfing the internet at home. They might not even have a cell phone, but as they get older, they will get a cell phone at some point. It's just a matter of time.
We're really targeting families of young kids. It's kind of 6 to 12. When kids are 12, is typically when kids are getting cell phones at that point.
Okay.
So we can get to help families when kids are younger. Then they grow up with a torch, and it doesn't phase them in as much the same way. If you introduce this now to a kid who's always had the full internet, that might be shocking to them.
Sure.
You might get a little reaction. And I think too, if your child leaves your home and they still need a torch or our mobile solution, then there's probably something that you've not done, because you want them to be responsible, ethical digital users by the time they leave your house. So the bumper pad effect. We talk about you need bumper pads when they're little, but then you start removing those bumper pads and giving them more and more responsibility.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. Shelley, we're running out of time, but maybe let's close the show with kind of promoting where people can find Torch, the router, your company, and any social media you want to promote personally as well.
So we website is mytorch.com. Okay. You can find all of our social channels on there. Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Pinterest. We have a YouTube page with lots of really fun, cool videos. We've kind of taken this irreverent approach with our videos and our marketing. Okay. Very tongue-in-cheek, not meant to be taken literally. So check out our videos on YouTube. They're really fun. And then you can reach me. Twitter's probably the best way, at Shelley Prevost. And I'm happy to connect with people who just want to know what we're doing. Anybody that needs some words of encouragement or advice if they're in the trenches with kids and technology. I would love to be that person. So
perfect. Well, Shelley, thanks again for doing this. I'm excited to met you, and this is awesome, and I look forward to kind of following you guys throughout the year and kind of the other products that you launch over the coming years.
Thank you, Kevin.
Perfect. Thanks. Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.